Good morning. I am calling the Peer Review Oversight Committee meeting to order. Welcome to the December 13th, 2024 Peer Review Oversight Committee meeting. This meeting is being conducted in person and via WebEx with the assistance of the Department of Consumer Affairs. My name is Laura Ross, and I am Chair of the California Board of Accountancy's Peer Review Oversight Committee, or PROC. Following the presentation of each agenda item, I will open the item for discussion and action if appropriate. PROC members participating virtually should use the raise hand feature and wait to be called on. I also ask that our members participating virtually keep their microphones on mute when not speaking. For public comment, I will ask if any members of the public attending in person would like to make a comment. If so, please step up to the table and wait to be recognized. Once any comments from members of the public attending in person are received, I will ask the moderator to open the lines for any members of the public participating remotely that would like to make a comment. At this time, I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Parsons to take roll call and establish a quorum. When Mr. Parsons calls your name, unmute your microphone and state your name. Please remember to mute your microphone once you have stated your name.
Nick Peterson.
Present.
Laura Ross.
Present.
Sharon Selleck.
Present.
Jeffrey DeLizer.
Present.
Fausto Hinojosa.
Present.
With that, we have a quorum.
Thank you. I will now read the CBA's mission statement. The CBA's mission is to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirement that protection of the public shall be the highest priority for the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. I would like to begin by congratulating both Fausto Hinojosa, who will be serving as the new chair of the PROC, and Nick Peterson, who will be serving as the new vice chair of the PROC for 2025. At this time, I'd like to welcome the CBA member liaison to the PROC, Tony Lin. Thank you, Mr. Lin, for attending our meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. Hey. Hi. Hi, good morning. Chair Ross and the member of the PROC. I'm the CBA member, Tony Lin, and I will be providing a report for the September and November CBA meetings.
Excuse me, Mr. Lin, actually, we've got another agenda item right before we go to you.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, agenda item 1, public comment for items not on the agenda. This item provides members of the public an opportunity to provide comment on items not on the agenda. Seeing we don't have an audience in Sacramento, moderator, are there any anyone on the line that do we have any potential commenters on the line?
This is the moderator. I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. You may also use the raise hand feature if you would like to make a public comment for items not on the agenda. All right, and seeing none. Would you like me to close the Q&A option?
Yes, thank you. Agenda item 2, report of the committee chair. Item A is approval of the August 9th, 2024 Peer Review Oversight Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes?
This is Fausto Hinojosa, so moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. I see Mr. DeLizer. Are there any comment? We have no members of the public in Sacramento. Moderator, are there any members of the public online?
This is the moderator for members of the public who are online. You can either use the raise hand feature or use the Q&A option down at the bottom right-hand corner to indicate that you would like to make a public comment on this agenda item. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A option?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Parsons, please call for a vote.
Jeffrey DeLizer,
Yes.
Sharon Selleck,
Yes.
Fausto Hinojosa,
Yes.
Laura Ross,
Yes.
and Nick Peterson.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to item 2C, I will turn the discussion over to CBA liaison Mr. Lin to provide the members with an overview of the recent CBA meetings. Thank you, Ms.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Hey, good morning, everyone again. I'm Tony Lin. I will be providing a report for the September and November CBA's meeting. At the September 19 to 20, 2024 meeting, the CBA held its meeting at California State University, San Marcos. During our meeting, CBA members and staff had the opportunity to conduct several outreach events and activities. We held presentations for students, conducted a meeting and mingle opportunity for students to interact with the CBA members, met with the faculty, and the staff did several hours of transcript review for students. In addition to conducting the outreach event at CSU San Marcos, staff and members also conducted an outreach event at University of California, San Diego, Division of Extended Study, the day before the September CBA meeting, which include presentations from CBA members and staff. The CBA approved 2 legislative proposals that will enhance the CPA licensure requirements and modernize mobility. Staff will be presenting information to you on this during today's meeting. The CBA held an interim meeting on November 4th, 2024. During the meeting, the CBA approved a comment letter in response to the AICPA's CPA competence-based experience pathway exposure draft, expressing concerns with the pathway draft technical quality and the undue burden it would place on candidates, firms, and State Board of Accountancy. The CBA approved a comment letter to NASBAC and the AICPA regarding the proposed revision of Uniform Accountancy Act and model rules, which include comments regarding the proposed changes to the licensure and mobility requirements. You can view the 2 letters for the exposure draft on the CBA's website. The CBA will also direct staff to work with CBA president to send a letter to NASBAC in person in response to their communication regarding the departures of redefining mobility. The letter expressed concerns with the communication and requested a meeting with NASBAC leaders to discuss the CBA's position regarding automatic mobility. At the November 2024 meeting, the CBA elected Yan Tu as the president, Kristen Latta, CPA, as vice president, and Doug Agaria, CPA, as secretary treasury. The CBA also appointed Faustin Hinojosa, CPA, to serve as Prague Chair, and Nick Peterson, CPA, to serve as Prague Vice Chair for 1-year term, effective January 1st, 2025. The CBA began work on its next strategic plan. This will be an interactive process, and the CBA will finalize the plan in early 2025. The CBA continued discussions regarding proposed change to continuing education requirements. The discussion centered on requiring completion of the CBA approved regulatory review course for new licenses to occur within 6 months of licensure or before their first renewal, whichever comes first. The CBA will hold its next regularly scheduled meeting in person at the California Board of Accountancy and VA Westback on January 23rd to 24th, 2025. That will be end of my report. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Lin, for both attending our meeting and providing an overview of CBA activities. Seeing there are no members of the public here in Sacramento, moderator, are there any members of the public waiting to make comments online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon or use the raise hand icon. All right, and see none, would you like me to close that Q&A option?
Thank you. Yes. Okay, moving on to agenda item 3, report on the peer review oversight committee activities since our last meeting of August 9th, 2024, and future activities. Item A, a report on the California Society of Certified Public Accountants report acceptance body meetings and the California Society of Certified Public Accountant peer review board meetings. There's a summary of the RABs, the report acceptance body meetings that we attended on page 11. Since our last meeting, we've attended 8 RAB meetings and observed 83 reports. All the RABs were found to be meeting with standards and appropriately handling the reports. Seeing that there are no members of the public in Sacramento, moderator, would you please open it up for public comment online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a comment on this item, you can click the raise hand icon or use the Q&A option down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A option?
Thank you. Yes. So moving on to agenda item B, report on the peer review oversight committee, oversight of out-of-state administering entities, partners in peer review, and the Oklahoma Society of CPAs. We have Sharon Selleck and Fausta Hinojosa who will be making this presentation. Sharon, would you like to go first?
Yes. One moment. I thought it was a written report item only. Just let me open it up one second. But I believe it was, there were no findings this time. There was something that was brought up last time, but that was cleared. So there were no findings noted, and I believe no recommendations as well.
Thank you, Sharon. And Fausto, would you like to present the other?
Yes. So I completed the review of the administering entity for partners in peer review, and they are the AE for 3 states, the states of Alabama, Arkansas, and Mississippi. I completed that review on August 13th and found that they complied with all of the requirements. There were no recommendations in this most recent report, and in fact, there were no recommendations in the previous report, so all expectations were met.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the members? And seeing there are no questions from the members and there are no members of the public in Sacramento, moderator, please open for public comment.
This is the moderator, and for members of the public on WebEx, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon or the Q&A option down at the bottom right-hand corner. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A option?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to agenda item C, report on notices posted on the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and National Association of State Boards of Accountancy's websites regarding changes and updates to the peer review program. This will be presented by Jeffrey DeLizer.
Thank you. I looked at those websites. There was not much to note that was directly related to peer review on NASBA's website. There was, however, maybe interesting to the members. There was a considerable amount of discussion related to alternatives to the 150-hour rule as that concept continues to move through boards of accountancy. On the AICPA website, the fall 2024 peer review prompts was posted. Peer review prompts is a semi-annual newsletter for peer reviewers to use to share with their peer review clients. The topics that were included in there, probably one of the ones that kind of relates to our discussions is that they're trying to expand the pool of peer reviewers that are available to a firm. And with the clarified standards removing the on-site requirements for peer review, they're encouraging peer review clients and firms to look, across the United States and expand their search for a potential peer reviewer. That newsletter also had articles related to using suggestions to use the peer review checklists for governmental audits as a governmental audit quality tool in the firm. And then discussions about the exposure draft related to clarifying when SARS-21's ARC Section 70 applies and its application to whether or not it applies to consulting engagements. And that section is on, excuse me, preparation engagements and whether or not that applies when a firm is doing a client advisory services. Also on the AICPA website were 2 reviewer alerts, and the reviewer alerts is communications from the peer review board and the AICPA to peer reviewers to kind of focus their attention on current issues. There was an October issue. One of the most interesting articles in that issue for October was that the question, they had done some polling to figure out whether or not peer review clients, firms out there, were ready for the new quality management standards. And peer reviewers reported overwhelmingly that their clients have not begun implementation. The number for their study was 77% of reviewers say that their clients have not even begun the implementation of those. Other articles, the exposure draft related to ARC's Section 70 was also reported there. And then in the November issue of the Reviewer Alert, they noted that the peer review standards update number 2 was adopted by the peer review board and is now part of the regulations. The peer review program manuals had a November update, And then there's an annual survey that the AICPA does seeking feedback from peer reviewers on a variety of topics. So that'll be something to kind of look and see how that, what kind of information they got as we look at future issues of the newsletter. There was other discussion about impacts of enforcement actions from the SEC and PCAOB and how that affects peer review. And then the alternative practice structures. There was a long article about that and private equity money that's coming into CPA firms' consulting practices. That was all that I had. I will turn it back over to you, Chair Ross.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the members? Seeing none, and we have no members of the public in Sacramento. Moderator, please open it up for public comment.
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon or the Q&A icon down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A option?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to agenda item D, report on the August 14th, 2024 Peer Review Oversight Committee's virtual administrative site visit to the California Society of Certified Public Accountants. This will be presented by myself and Nick Peterson, and I'll start with just a few lines. The site visit went smoothly. Cal CPA provided representatives who were well-versed and able to describe all activities. Almost all questions we had were able to be addressed during the meeting, with perhaps one or two that took just some time for them to get the data to give us for the others. And it was, except for the outstanding questions, we were able to complete the ASV in one day. Nick, would you like to add anything?
Only that I did like the new format. I think having kind of that preliminary visit with Rich and then having him provide his assertions, I think made the overall site visit go quicker than it had in the previous period. And yeah, we didn't have anything of significant recommendations, just more of slight modifications to questions or just items of consideration. So no, I think it went very smoothly.
Yeah, and glad we did use a new checklist this year, and it did go very smoothly. Are there any comments or questions from the members? Seeing none, and we have no members of the public in Sacramento, is moderator, please open it up for public comment.
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. You can request to make public comment on this item by clicking the raise hand icon or using the Q&A option down at the bottom. All right, and we do have a request from Rich Simitian. And Rich, you'll be given 5 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
And with Cal CPA Director of the Peer Review Program, wanted to acknowledge the cooperation and a really streamlined process we went through from a administrative site visit standpoint. This is a process we at Cal CPA take very seriously. We appreciate the dialogue that takes place during that meeting, some thoughtful questions with regard to information that we have provided or could provide in the future. So all of that was taken or will be taken into consideration. I do want to point out the ability to do this in the earlier time period. This was done in August and past. This has been sort of this November, December time period, which came at a busy peer review period. So it kind of worked out very well from our standpoint, and my sense is was more facilitated the completion of this process a little bit earlier on your end as well. So wanted to acknowledge that, and to the extent we can continue to do that in that time period, that would be certainly our preference if that can continue. But wanted to thank the members of the PROC who participated Nick and Laura, for your involvement this year, as well as staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks.
All right, this is the moderator. It appears there are no further requests for public comment.
Thank you. So moving on to agenda item E, assignment of future peer review oversight committee oversight roles, responsibilities, activities, and assignments. This will be done by Matthew Parsons, coordinator of the licensing renewal and continuing competency unit.
All right, thank you, Chair Ross. So we only have a couple things today. I did receive some RABs earlier this morning, which I'll get to. But before that, do we have a volunteer for the website review for the February meeting? Okay, Member DeLizer. All right, we have two out-of-state entities, one being Tennessee and the other being Virginia Society of CPAs. Any volunteers for those? All right, Sharon and Fausto. Any particular one?
I'm fine with either.
Okay. Thank you. Then we have a couple RABs here for the month of January. You don't have those on your list, but I did get those this morning, so I'll just read them off. There's a couple days here. January 14th at 2 p.m. Okay, there's two on January 16th. Oh, Nick, pardon me. Member Peterson, thank you. I got you down for the 14th at 2. On January 16th, there's one at 9 and 2. All right, Member Selleck, any particular time of?
The 2 p.m. one?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. January 21st at 9 a.m. Okay, January 23rd at 2 p.m. And January 28th at 2 p.m. Okay.
Mr. Parsons, this is
Yeah.
Jeff DeLicer. I can do the 21st. What was the time on that one?
9 in the morning.
I can do that one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll give everyone just a second. I know you didn't have those dates and times in front of you.
I can't.
Okay, we got 4 of the 6, so I think we're in good shape for right now. Thank you.
Okay, are there any comments or questions from the members? And seeing there are no members of the public in Sacramento, moderator, would you please open it up for public comment?
This is the moderator. Members of the public on WebEx, if you would like to make a comment on this item, you can click the raise hand icon or use the Q&A option down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. All right, and seeing no requests, would you like me to close that Q&A option?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 4, report the licensing chief, Michelle Center, Chief Licensing Division. She'll have a discussion of the draft 2024 Peer Review Oversight Committee annual report.
Thank you, Chair Ross. Before I begin on that report, I just want to welcome Suzanne Gracia. She's to my right. I know we are kind of a small little visual there on our screen, but hopefully you see Suzanne. Suzanne is our new Deputy Chief of Licensing, and so I'm very happy to have her. She has many, many years of experience here at the board. She was the exam manager, and most recently, she served as our BizMod lead. And so I'm lucky to have her. You may see her taking my place up here at some future PROC meetings as we go forward. But just wanted to take a moment to do that before I jump into our favorite topic, our annual report. So, as you know, the purpose of this agenda item is to discuss our PROC 2024 annual report. Staff asks that the PROC review the draft annual report and provide feedback and edits. We will bring the report back to you in February for your final approval. So as I normally do, I'm going to guide you through the report section by section, chunk by chunk, solicit your edits and comments. I will be using the revised attachment, and that was the one sent to you on Wednesday. So if you need to take a moment to make sure that you are using that one, it's also the one that's currently posted to our website. You will be using the raise hand feature so that we don't speak over each other as we go through our comments. And please note that you can provide comments to us about typos and grammar and those type of things that do not need a discussion of the committee. You can do that following this meeting so that we can focus our time on the things that we need to discuss. So let's start and we'll kind of see how we're doing. And I, kind of adjust how big my chunks are, depending on how many hands I see going up out there. So I'm going to be referencing page numbers, and those are the page numbers that are on the bottom right as you look at the item. So for example, Member Ross has her message from the chair on page 2. So let's start by looking at pages 2, 3, and 4. Any feedback, comments, or things to discuss on 2, 3, and 4? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 up through table 1. Sharon?
On page 8, it was more a question, and if Rick is still on, maybe he could address. It just still seems like there's one peer reviewer who's doing a lot, like doing a system review per week or per every week. Just system reviews are pretty intensive. That it just still seems like a really high concentration with one person, given that they may also have their own public accounting practice.
I can respond to that. And that did come up as part of the annual site visit. And Member Ross and Member Peterson did ask for some additional information that we just recently received. So that is information that we can add to the annual site visit to share with you in the next draft. Mr. Simidian, we may need to promote him as a panelist during this conversation. Moderator, if you could do that. Let's allow Mr. Simidian to add any additional comments to what I just said.
Yes, Michelle, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like me to go through the response or summarize the response of what I've provided during the
yes, please summarize the response, and then we can add that to the report here.
Okay, I'll do my best here. But the same question came up that Sal provided with regard to the concentration data, if you will, the large number of or higher volume reviewers. And in the instance that you noted, we did go back and take a look at the engagements and the reviews during that time period. The number of system reviews, they are more complex reviews, but we looked at the nature, the size of those firms. Substantially all of those firms had less than 2 partners. So when we look at the time necessary in order to do that, we have a large number of firms that are sole practitioners in our database. And this particular reviewer, this high volume reviewer, works substantially. All of those reviews have less than 2. There's, I think his largest one has 5. So the ability to complete those reviews in that time period for larger firms, I think would be much more of a challenge from a quality standpoint and so forth. But in this case, we were satisfied with regard to the number of reviews performed around that. It's not uncommon for our high volume reviewers for that to be a predominant part of the practice. In order to be a peer reviewer, obviously you have to be able to do those audits, but you don't necessarily need to be doing a single audit every month or a engagement. So, in these cases, some of these high volume reviewers, the peer review part of their practice is a larger part of their practice than the regular engagements, if you will, as well. So that might impact it as well. But in this case, it was clearly the size of those engagements and those system reviews that enabled the firm to go through that. That is also a factor we look at when we select oversights. We look at high volume reviewers. If there's a large number of comments, all of those things would be back. And if we didn't in this case, but if there are situations where we find that there are some pervasive issues, we can put a cap on the number of new reviewers, new peer reviews that reviewer can accept. Well, they can accept it, but we want to prove it as the administering entity. And that has not been necessary in the last 2 years on this reviewer. So.
Thank you, Mr. Smitty. So we have some of that information in the first paragraph on page 8, but I think we can expand on that, particularly as it relates to that one reviewer. So we'll go ahead and look at whether or not we can expand that paragraph in the next version that we bring back in February. Sharon, did you have additional feedback?
I was just going to say, and if not on page 8, perhaps in table 14, where that's more evident, that might be a better spot.
We'll look at doing it in one of those places. Any other comments up until table 1 on page 9? Okay, seeing none, we will move on and we will take it through up until table 2. Okay, I don't see any hands. So, Sharon snuck one in there. I wasn't fast enough. It's okay, Sharon. What is it?
But on page 10, the 80% complete, I was just curious if there was an update because I believe the AICPA data was from April. Or do we just wait on when they issue reports versus getting interim updates?
Yeah. We don't get that information outside of the reports, but if you're interested in it, we can reach out to AICPA and see if they have an answer.
How about we check on that after this meeting? If it's available to be updated, we'll do that, but it may not be. Okay. All right. So continuing on through graph 2 on page 16, I do want to note that table 4 was the reason for the revised version to be sent out. We got some corrected data from Cal CPA. Thank you, Ms. Selleck, for kind of tracking down the possible reason for some odd data in that table. So we were able to correct that. So do I have any comments up through graph 2 on page 16? Ms. Selleck?
I know you love me. Was there meant to be a table 2? We start with, or table 1, we start with table 2 on page 14, and I wasn't sure if we're missing a table or just numbering.
Table 1 on page 9? Is that what you were referring to?
Well, there's a table
then there's a table
1
2
and
on
table
2.
2 on 10, yeah. And I wasn't sure if that was, those 2 tables were specific to something else.
Yeah, we'll correct that. We have some table numbering issues there. You got staff are making notes, so we'll go ahead and we'll get that one corrected. Let's move on then. So looking through page 18, I did have a question for you all, because this was a question I think I sent to Rich, and maybe it's clear. Towards the bottom of the table on page 18, it says does not perform any, and then it says insert type engagements. Do we need to put some examples of what might be inserted there, or is that data clear? Because it is new for 2023. Mr. Simidian, would examples be governmental, LEA, nonprofit? I mean, are those the type of things that would be there, or am I completely off the mark?
You know, I had that as a follow-up. That is a new element in that report, so I wasn't familiar with that, and I'm awaiting a response on that. So I have that on my to-do to follow up on that, because that type of situation would be covered, I think would be covered in one of the other categories if they were just referring to single, and it's unlikely we'd only have one, so it must mean something else. Candidly, I don't know what it is. So I have that as I follow up on that.
Okay, so just members might note that we'll probably have something new information to add based on what we get back from Cal CPA. Any additional feedbacks up through page 18? Okay, so let's go on through, call me crazy. Let's try through table 14 on page 25. I got it. I got to give Miss Selleck a minute. We count on you. Okay. You have the floor.
So it may be a minor item, and because I know we've already addressed table 14 on the recommendations, the last bullet, do we want to reiterate there that becomes effective 1/1/25, or which be past tense by the time we issue?
Yes, we should talk specifically about the recommendations that, staff have a couple in here for your consideration. This is your report, so you may disagree or have additional ones. So we did want to continue to monitor the peer reviewer population. We believe it's probably appropriate, and we anticipate that you will agree with that recommendation. Then we also added another one, as I believe we reported out at a prior PROC meeting. In our sunset legislation, we were able to change the law so that there is no longer an opt-out for California firms in terms of sharing their peer reviewer information with the board via the facilitated state board access. And so that, starting in January, will provide us with some data directly. We don't, and I think we will really learn in 2025 what that looks like and what data we may be able to extract on our own. This is not all peer reviewer documentation in there. It's not like working papers or anything like that. It is all objective type information. So this is just making sure that we are monitoring that the AICPA is updating their applications to ensure that they remove that opt-out feature. Mr. Simidian has been working with AICPA to make sure this happens, so we anticipate that it will. but we do want to make sure that we monitor it. So that's also a staff recommendation. So why don't we just start our discussion by, does anyone have any concerns? I did hear Ms. Selleck's feedback to add a date in there, which we can do that. But do we have any concerns with the staff recommended recommendations? You like that? Okay, seeing none, does anyone want to suggest any other recommendations for discussion? Okay. Fausto?
Yeah, I just do have a question about that recommendation. And as a peer reviewer, I will from time to time have the firms ask me about that opt-in or opt-out. And when given the option, most choose to opt out. And so I don't have a concern either way. I'm just procedurally, we make this recommendation to the AICPA. Is that something they can decide to accept or not, or is it a legal regulatory requirement here?
It is now a legal requirement in California because it has been made in law. I do want to point out that AICPA supported this change. This is something that was in one of the exposure drafts, I believe, that was done maybe last year or the year before, where they did talk about states that were kind of moving in this fashion to have this information available to state boards. We know that some states are prohibited by their law to receive it, and some states already have this exact feature where they're not allowed to opt out.
And just, I'm sorry.
Mr. Smitty, do you want to add to that?
Oh, I just wanted to address your comment, Fausto. So what that would look like to the review, to the firms now, if you think about your clients, for example, whereas in the past they would, as they go through the enrollment process, they would be able to, there'd be some wording which would allow them to literally check the box to opt out. That wording, and I've reviewed that wording, has been modified. So what will happen now, effective January 1, is there'll be a notification that this legislation change was approved effective January 1, and that objective information is available. So they'll no longer be an option. But I did want to point out, although not to take away from what you just said with regard, a large majority of firms did not. I don't know what the percentage was, but historically we haven't had a lot of California firms opt out, but now none of them would be given the option to do that. But it'll be a little different on the front end. It'll look different to them as they're going through enrollment. And on the back end, the information has been programming changes that will provide that information through FSBA effective January 1.
Thanks for that clarification. That's helpful. And so is the primary purpose so that the Board of Accountancy oversight can be more effective, or is it beyond that?
It is for oversight, just as you mentioned.
Thank you.
Is Pennsylvania still something that we want to highlight in our recommendations, or was that kind of resolved in this year's administrative site visit, or is it continuing that we want to keep an extra eye on that?
I think it was discussed at the annual site visit, so I'll let Laura respond.
Well, I mean, this is if we need to make a recommendation on
right. We had a
Pennsylvania.
We had a prior recommendation last year.
Okay.
That I can't remember if it was just kind of monitor the support or something that Pennsylvania was providing CalCPA. If you want to carry over that recommendation, I don't think there's harm in that. that can be something that is addressed at the annual site visit. I don't think that, I don't think there's harm, and it's something that I think is appropriate if PROC would like to do that.
I mean, I was under the impression this is going to continue at this main point. That
Correct.
Pennsylvania will continue to participate.
Yeah, just to be clear, Mr. Simidian at the annual site visit did indicate that this relationship with Pennsylvania was planned to continue on. So given that, unless I hear an objection, I'll go ahead and add that to the report for February.
I guess it would be prudent to just continue to keep it in there while this is,
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments or additions on the recommendations? Okay, so if you find any additional edits that are things that do not need discussion, typos, grammar, those kind of things, please do have those to staff no later than the 20th of December, so that we can get this ready for our next PROC meeting. So with that, I will turn this back over to Chair Ross.
okay. Any last minute comments from the members on this agenda item? And seeing there are no members of the public in Sacramento, moderator, would you please open it up for public comment?
This is the moderator, and for our members of the public on WebEx, if you would like to make a comment on this item, you can either click the raise hand icon or use the Q&A option down at the bottom. And for call-in user individuals, if you would like to make a public comment, you can raise your hand by pressing star on your device. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 4B, report on the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants Peer Review Program National Peer Review Committee 2023 Annual Report Oversight, issued May 9th, 2024. This is a written report only. I don't know exactly what page it was on, but are there any comments or questions from the members on this written report item? Seeing none, and there are no members of the public in Sacramento, moderator, please open it up for public comment.
This is the moderator. If members of the public would like to make a comment on this item, you can click the raise hand icon or use the Q&A down at the bottom. And if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing star 3 on your device. All right, and seeing no requests, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 4C, report on the California Board of Accountancy licensure and mobility legislative proposal. Alfred Burleson, this will be presented by Alfred Burleson, Analyst, Initial Licensing Division.
Thank you, Chair Ross. I'm Alfred Burleson, and I'm an analyst in the Initial Licensing Unit here at the CBA. The purpose of this agenda item is to provide the Peer Review Oversight Committee with information on the CBA's legislative proposal to modernize licensing requirements and mobility. At the September 2024 CBA meeting, the CBA reviewed and approved a licensure legislative proposal. It is important to note that the CBA must now find an author for a legislative bill, and changes to the proposed language are likely to occur as part of the legislative process. As currently written, the CBA approved legislative proposal would eliminate the 150 semester unit requirement from the licensure requirement. It would reduce the minimum accounting concentration unit requirement by narrowing the course content to only relevant subjects. Require 2 years of experience, but allow for options to reduce that requirement by earning an accounting-related advanced degree or earning specified certificates. Recognize specific degrees granted by California colleges and universities as meeting all the educational requirements, thus eliminating the uncertainty some students express feeling. Presuming an author has found the legislative bill passes in the 2025 legislative session and is signed into law, it will have an effective date of January 1st, 2026. The new licensure pathway of a bachelor's degree with an accounting concentration and 2 years of experience would become effective 6 months after the effective date of the new bill, which would be July 1st, 2026. Delaying implementation by 6 months provides CBA staff to complete an implementation tasks, such as promulgating regulations and performing outreach to ensure that students, potential applicants, and stakeholders understand the new changes. Once the new licensure requirements are implemented, the current pathway will become a legacy pathway and will eventually be phased out entirely. The legacy pathway would be eliminated on January 1st, 2029, allowing candidates to utilize the legacy pathway for 3 years. This allows those that have met the additional requirements of the legacy pathway to complete 1 year of experience compared to the increased experience requirement of the new pathway. In addition to updating the licensure requirements, the CBA approved a mobility legislative proposal that would allow any individual whose principal place of business is not in California and whose license is current and active to practice public accountancy in California under a practice privilege without notice. It allows the CBA to remove a state from no notice mobility when the CBA determines it is in the interest of California consumers. A fact sheet that covers both the licensure and mobility provisions of the CBA approved legislative proposals is included as an attachment. As I stated at the beginning of my presentation, these are only proposals at this point, and the legislative bills may modify the CBA recommendations or potentially not pass out of the legislature. That concludes my presentation. I will now turn it over to Chair Ross. Michelle Center is available to answer any questions that any members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Burleson. Are there any comments or questions from the members? Seeing none, and there are no members of the public in Sacramento. Moderator, please open it up for public comment.
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon or use the Q&A option down at the bottom. If you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A option?
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 5, closing business. Item A, agenda items for future peer review oversight committee meetings. Prior to adjourning, do any members have suggested topics for future committee meetings? Seeing none, I do have one question though for Mr. Parsons. Maybe I missed it. Did we assign someone to go to the make the presentation at the CBA meeting in January?
Fausto is scared.
Okay, I didn't hear it, and I wasn't sure if it came up. Okay.
I didn't come up here today, but
okay. Okay. Seeing no members have any comments, and there are no members of the public in Sacramento, is there anybody in the audience that would like to make a public comment? I'm sorry. Moderator, please open it up to public comment.
No worries. This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a comment on this item, you can either raise your hand or click the Q&A icon down at the bottom. If you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A option?
Yes, thank you. Okay, item 6, adjournment. The PROC meeting is complete and we are now adjourned. Thank you.